Thrust. To push something or someone suddenly or violently in specified direction. Acts 9:3-6. And as he journeyed, he came near Damascus, and suddenly there shined around about him a light from heaven. And he fell to the earth, and heard a voice saying unto him, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? And he said, Who art thou, Lord? And the Lord said, I am Jesus, whom thou persecutest. It is hard for thee to kick against the pricks. And he, trembling and astonished, said, Lord, what wilt thou have me to do? And the Lord said to him, Arise and go into the city, and it shall be told thee what thou must do. Alright, hey everybody, welcome back. Once again, it's your girl Jasmine. So we're going to be in Exodus today, in Exodus 12, and we're going to kind of start in verse 31. But basically I'm saying that this is transition season. A lot of people are transitioning, moving into new places in their life. Whatever God was preparing you last season to do, He is going to bring you into the next season so that you can transition into the place in which He's been preparing you to be in all last season. And so you should have some kind of idea where it is that God is bringing you, because you think about here when we're gonna I'll kind of update you guys on what's happening here in Exodus 12 verse beforehand. Basically what was happening was God raised up Moses, told Moses go into Egypt, and told Moses, hey, Moses, go to Pharaoh and tell them, let my people go so they could dwell with me in the wilderness. And basically he was just like, okay, well, I have a place for them. He wanted to bring them to the promised land. They already knew that God wanted to move them forward. So it's not like the children of Israel didn't know that Moses kept approaching Pharaoh like, hey, let my people go. Let my people go, So it's not like the children of Israel did not know already that Moses was approaching Pharaoh on God's behalf to say, hey, let my people go. So it's just like the same thing with God. God prepares you for the next season in your life. It's not like you are just waking up like, hey, So we're gonna kind of like talk about it as like a woman who is about to give birth and have a child. And when you think about a woman who's pregnant, it's not like she wakes up and goes, oh, there's a baby here. No, she has gone to the doctors. Well, some because actually one of my friends actually woke up and her water broke and she had a baby, so she didn't know. So yeah, sometimes that does happen, but with God, God has been preparing you for next season of your life. And so it's kind of like, okay, you have your belly, you've probably been to the doctors a few times, you've been collecting clothes and diapers and pacifiers and different things. You've been preparing for your child, and so sometimes us as some people, they just, are kind of, they don't really prepare for what's about to happen because, sometimes you think about the great struggle. So we're going to kind of see what's going on here. So we're going to start in Exodus chapter 12, verse 31. It says, and he called for Moses and Aaron, he being Pharaoh, because what happened is the firstborn sons just died. God had sent all the famines. And he called for Moses and Aaron by night and said, arise and get forth from among the people, both ye and the children of Israel, and go serve the Lord as ye have asked. So see, like I had said before, they should have known already what was about to happen. They should have known that they were going to serve the Lord and where it was that God wanted them to serve, in the place in which it was that God wanted them to be in their place in the life, transitioning to the place in which it was that God had called them to be. So we see that right there. And it says, also take your flocks and your herds, as ye have said, and be gone, and bless me also. And the Egyptians were urging upon the people that they might send them out of the land in haste, for they said, we be all dead men. And the people took their dough before it was leavened, and their kneading troughs, and being bound up in their clothes upon their shoulders. And the children of Israel did according to the word of Moses, and they borrowed of the Egyptians jewels of silver, gold, and raiment. And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they lent unto them such as they required. And they spoiled the Egyptians. So basically what we're seeing here is that, there were certain things in which they, it's kind of like when you think about having a child, there were certain things in which, you kind of prepare to, before your child comes, you're pregnant, so you're preparing for your child, the parent is to prepare for the child. And so basically it says, they took their dough and it was leaven in their kneading troughs being bound up in their clothes upon their shoulders. So they had their clothing with them. They were able to take their clothing with them. And it says the children of Israel did according to the word, and they borrowed of the Egyptian jewels of silver, jewels of gold, and raiment. And so basically they had, a few things of silver and gold with them as they left. And so, it says, so that they lent unto them such things as required. So basically they had, at least, what was required, of them. And it says, and the children of Israel journeyed from Ramses to Succoth, about 600,000 on foot, that were men besides children. And a mixed multitude went up also with them, and the flocks and the herds, even the very much cattle. And so we're going to kind of pay focus to 39. And it says, and they baked unleavened cakes of dough, which they brought forth out of Egypt. For it was not leavened, because they were thrusted out of Egypt. They could not tarry, neither had they prepared for themselves any victuals. So basically, here they are, and so basically, what we're seeing is that they had a few things, but they did not have victuals. We think about provisions. They were not. They didn't really have any provisions made ahead of time. Because they were pushed out. They were thrusted out of the place in which they were. And so, they could not wait. It says they could not tarry. They could not tarry. So whatever it was that they had with them was what they were able to have, but they had no provisions. They really didn't have any provisions in, what it was that was to, happen whenever they got to the place in which it was that they were going. And, you think about like people like, the children of Israel as they crossed the Jordan, and in Joshua, it says, prepare your victuals, for in 3 days you will cross over the Jordan. So they were able to better prepare for what it was that was going to happen as they crossed over the Jordan. But this, and right here in Exodus, they were thrusted out. They were pushed out, and you just think about, sometimes, when God moves us, we have nothing, yet God is going to provide, because, we're being pushed out of the place in which we are in, into new places. You think about a child when it's being pushed out of its environment, it comes very suddenly. And so basically the parent has to provide for the child on the other side. The child does not have the means or the needs in which it is that the child would need, but the basically provisions are already made. Even though they had no provisions or victuals made, provisions made, God had the provisions already made. The Bible talks about, I go to prepare, in my house are many mansions. If there were not so, I would have not told you. I go to prepare a place for you. Meaning God has a place already prepared for them, even though they don't have any preparations. But it's like, hey, okay, well, it's like not like God was surprised. God wouldn't have approached Moses and said, hey, Moses, well, go to Pharaoh, if at one point they weren't going to be set free, if at one point they weren't going to go ahead and move to the next place. So God already had a place prepared for them. So you think about a parent, as a child comes to the world, the parent has whatever it is for the child prepared, and is, it's not like the child just, the parent just woke up and was like, hey, oh, I'm pregnant, I don't have a place for my child, I don't, it's like, okay, the child comes and the parent is prepared. Okay, I have my clothing. I prepared the bag, in which the has the clothes and the formula, or whether I'm breastfeeding, or, this, that, it's like there was all these months to prepare for what it was. The parent already prepared ahead of time for the child. So sometimes when we're pushed into new places, basically what happens is God is going to have the preparations made, because sometimes it just happens so fast, that we just don't have, because we're being pushed out, that we don't have all the provisions made. And so God already has the provisions made for us. So I'm going to put up the first few questions and we're going to carry on. Do you have what it is required of you to transition to where it is the next place that God wants you? Have you been preparing for where it is that God is taking you? Okay. All right, you guys. So when you just think about, when a child is ready to come, you never really, there's a time where it comes, but when it's time, point blank period, it's time. When God wants to transition you, it's time. There's point blank period, there's no turning back. You can't sit there and be like, okay, child, stay in there. No, the child needs to come forth. The child needs, if it's time to transition where, it's like this. Point blank period, you have Egyptians behind you, or you have forward. So you get to that place where there's no turning back, and you can either go forward or you can go forward, but there's no moving backwards. The child has to come out. There's no holding the child in there. So saying, okay, let's wait a little longer. No, when the child's ready to come out, the child's ready to come out. So when God wants to transition you, there may be a place of the comfortable place, because, hey, that's it. When the child's ready to come, the child's ready to come. It's going to be really uncomfortable, and it's going to stay uncomfortable until you move to the next place where it is that God needs you to move to. So basically, it was their time to transition. And so we're going to kind of see that, when we're going to look at Genesis 13, starting in verse 5. So it says, and Lot also, which went with Abram, had flocks and herds and tents, and the land was not able to bear them, that they might dwell together, for their substance was great, so that they could not dwell together. And there was strife between the herdsmen and Abram's cattle, and the herdsmen of Lot's cattle, and the Canaanites and the Perizzites as well, then in the land. And Abram said unto Lot, let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between my herdsmen and thy herdsmen, for we be brethren. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. If thou wilt take the left hand, I will go right, and if thou depart from the right, then I will go left. And Lot lifted up his head and beheld the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere before the Lord, and destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even in the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as thou comest unto Zoar. And Lot chose him the plain of the Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves, the one from the other. And Abraham dwelled in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelled in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent towards Sodom. So basically what we're seeing here is it's that place of uncomfortability. It's that place that's very uncomfortable, because, when you're about to give birth, when you're about to push, when you're about to transition, it's a very uncomfortable place, because it's just oh my gosh, I've talked to a lot of women who've been pregnant in their last trimester, and they're saying they can't sleep, and they're very restless, and, it just is, you're just in a comfortable place. The place where they were in could not bear them anymore. When a child, when you're bearing a child, when you're carrying a child, it gets to a place where that, you cannot carry that child anymore, because that child is restless. That child is ready to come out. There's a lot of strife. There's a lot of issues. So when God is trying to transition you into the place and where it is, it's like the place where you're in. It says right here, it says, and the land was not able to bear them, that they might dwell together. So the land was not able to bear them anymore. So the place where you're in is going to no longer be able to bear you any longer, because you're not supposed to be there any longer. You're supposed to transition into the next spot. So, the more you try to stay in the place where you are, the more strife and complications it's going to be, and the harder it is for you to just be comfortable. Like I said, when it's due time, when a child is ready to come, then it is time. When God is ready to move you into the next place in which it is that he wants to move you in your life, then that is it, point blank period. Until you move on where it is that God needs you to move to, things are going to continue being uncomfortable. You're going to continue being uncomfortable until you transition, because the child, the child has done growing in the place in which it is that he was at, and that kind of just reminds me of myself. I know I'm in a place of transition, and I know a few weeks ago, I was, I kind of take life lessons on what people say to me, and I was learning everything, and I actually got everything down pat, when I was at work. And so, when and I was like, oh, okay, well, I understand everything now. I understand how to do what it is. So when you get to a place in your life, it's kind of like going on to the next grade. You're not going to stay in the same grade if you understand what it was that you just learned. Because you have it down packed, because you got it all together, because you understand what it is that God was trying to show you, he's going to move you into the next place so you can use what it is. Like, you wouldn't stay in college, to take more classes on something that you don't know. You're going to want to, if you got all your credits, you got everything else, you're going to graduate, and then you're going to go into the next part. You're going to go work, and you're going to use your degree for whatever it is that God that you've been training to do. So that's kind of with God. Whatever God has been training you to do in the last season, you're going to use whatever you learned in the last season, and do it in the next season of your life and where it is he's transitioning to. But if you stay in the same place, it's going to be uncomfortable because you have nothing else to learn there. It's like sitting there in a class with all new students and you already know everything that the teacher's talking about. You want to be in a new class, in a new place, learning new things, growing, instead of, being in this uncomfortable place. It's a new place in which it is. So I'm going to put up the next few questions, and then we're going to carry on a little bit more. All right, guys? Peace. Question. Is the place you're in getting uncomfortable? Are you ready to part from where you are? Do you understand once you transition, there's no looking back? Alright, guys. So, like I said before, when it's time, it's time. So, when you think about when it's time, a woman starts going to labor, she starts having contractions. And so that contraction is kind of talking about, how there's that uncomfortable place, they're having these contractions. And so basically whenever a woman is pregnant and she's about to have contractions, the child is about to go journey through one place to the next place. And so we're going to kind of look at Joshua 3. And so this is kind of the children of Israel as they're crossing over the Jordan into the next place in their life in which it is that they're going to be. And so, the other day what was happening to me was, I've been, reading Joshua 3 a lot, and on my blogs, what I do is I use the road signs that I pay attention to right now, because I'm talking about direction, because I'm talking a lot about transition. So a lot of the things that I do are talking about road signs and direction, and so I pay attention to a lot of the signals. And so I walked to work, and I was about to cross the street, and I pressed the button. It says walk and do not walk, and it reminded me of here, because when a mother is giving birth to her child, she knows when to push, and she pushes during the contractions. And so we're gonna kind of talk about how when God wants you to move, it's kind of like pushing it's like, okay, don't walk, don't. And so that's kind of what's happening here. So they kind of direct you on what it is that you're doing when you transition, and God, when you're transitioning, God's going to direct you on what it is, when you transition and what he needs you to do. And so, it's kind of like instructions. A woman is, to know, if you took like Lamaze classes and all that other stuff, where to walk and how to push and all that stuff. But sometimes if we don't do the things in which God has prepared us to do, or pay attention to how God wants us to do those things, or didn't pay attention in class, then we are going to mess up in certain areas. And I think about my friend who didn't know she was pregnant, and she said that when she was having her baby, she pushed and she popped all her blood vessels in her face because she didn't know how to do it. And we didn't pay attention to the signs and the signals of what it was that God was trying to show us in previous months before. If we didn't realize that God was moving us into new places, we didn't realize we were pregnant, and we didn't realize what God was doing in our life, then we are not going to know when to push, when to walk, and when not to walk. Because we should already know by what it was that God was teaching us. She didn't know she was pregnant, so she never took the classes, so she wasn't able to be instructed on those things in which it was that God, that she had to prepare for. She didn't know she had to prepare, but because if you weren't aware, then you weren't able to really prepare. But these people were aware of what it was, because God was giving them signs. Hey, let my people go so they can dwell with me in the wilderness. They had some kind of, they knew at some point we're going to be set free, because God's going to set us free. God had promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, hey, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to free your people at some point. So we're, okay, so here we are in Joshua 3. It says, "And Joshua rose up early in the morning, and they removed from Shittim and came to the Jordan, and he and all the children of Israel, and lodged there before they passed over. And it came to pass after 3 days that the officers went through the host, and they commanded the people, saying, When ye see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, and the priests, the Levites, bearing it, ye shall remove from your place and go after it. Yet there shall be space between you and it, about 2,000 cubits by measure. Come not near unto it, that ye may know the way by which you must go, for ye have not passed this way heretofore." So basically, what it was saying, that they were to, basically to watch out for the Ark of the Covenant, because they've never been in that place before. So they were to stand behind, like it says, come not near unto it, that ye may know which way by which you must go, for ye have not passed this way therefore. So basically they were to, they kind of had the signal they were to go after it whenever they saw the Ark. So basically, whenever they saw a move of God, or where God was directing them, they were to walk. Walk, don't walk. Walk, don't walk. And so the next part that I really see here is it says, "Yet there shall be a space between you and it, and 2,000 cubits by measure. Come not near it, that ye may know the way by which ye must go, for ye have not passed this way before." So I'm going to kind of give you an example of, what this means to me. The other day it was my birthday, and so I went into the city with my friend, and she kind of, we kind of get into a place of comfortability. And so we're in this place of comfort in our lives. And so what happens is, we get so used to going in the same direction. But they had never been in this, place before. And what happened to me and my friend the other day is she's so used to going a certain direction home because she lives in a certain town. But I know a different way across, to get to my town on a different highway. And, I just let her go her way, but it would have been easier for us to go my way, because it was closer to, my house and where I live. And so what happens here is, they had to make sure they kind of stood behind it, because this was a place they've never gone before. So next time when I go out with my friend, I'll, direct her my way. So, and she'll have to listen to kind of my instructions and what it is, because she doesn't know where she is. It will be unfamiliar to her, but I'll be directing her. So right here, it's kind of like God, they've never been there before, but they have to stand behind God and wait for God to move because they've never been to this place before in their life. They've never, walked this walk before. It's going to be an all new path, all new direction, and where it is that God's taking you. And when you transition, you may be prepared for where it is that God is taking you. You may have, some things prepared for you, but you have never been to this place in your life. It is a new place, a new journey. Yes, you may have been prepared for it, but just because you've been prepared for it does not mean anything. You think about people, you may be able to do it, but for instance, there's a difference from being in school studying all the time and then going into your profession. Yes, you know all the book knowledge. Yes, you know all the, this and that knowledge, but it's a difference when you have to go hands-on and, unless you truly, have been like sitting there, doing the work. That's why a lot of time they do internships and stuff like that. So you really want to pay attention to what, God is doing when he moves. You move and follow his instructions and direction, what it is that he is going to do, when the doctor says push, you push, listen to the instructions, when the doctor says don't push, So whatever it is that God is directing you to do in this season of your life, you're moving into the next place, it's going to come suddenly. There's no turning back. That's it. Once you move forward, the door is going to be closed behind you. Once the baby's here, the baby is here, healthy, you go into a next stage of motherhood, parenthood, and to, what it is that God has for you in the next place in your life. So I just encourage you guys to stay encouraged as you're transitioning into the next place in your life, and I love you guys so much. I'm going to put the link to the blog, Life After Miscarrying, down bottom. I kind of talk about choosing life, barrenness, miscarrying, conception. Then I also talk about, I did a blog talking about what to expect when expecting, bearing, Hannah's prayer kind of. And so this is going to kind of go under pushing. So, because I just did bearing last night. So, yes. So I thank you guys so much for tuning in, and until we meet again. Alright, you guys, God bless. Peace. Happy transition. Bye, y'all. Are you ready to have God as your GPS? Where are you heading to in the next place in your life? Have you paid attention to God's signs he's given you in the last season?